Jasmine was halfway through her morning briefing when her phone started to vibrate. Once, twice, then non-stop. Layla stuck her head into the conference room, her eyes wide. "You need to see this." Jasmine set down her folder. "Can it wait?" "No." She followed Layla out to the hallway, where a laptop was propped open on a small table. The video had already racked up over 2 million views in less than an hour. She didn't have to read the headline to feel her stomach tighten. President Ibrahim Traoré sends message of support to U.S. Congresswoman. Layla pressed play. On screen, Traoré stood behind a simple podium draped in a flag she recognized instantly. His voice was calm, but carried an unmistakable conviction. Across oceans and continents, we witness acts of courage that remind us we are never truly alone. Jasmine's pulse kicked up, though she didn't move. To Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, in times when speaking truth invites consequences, you have shown a strength that many claim, but few possess. The reporters in the background scribbled furiously, their cameras clicking. Traoré paused, then leaned slightly closer to the microphone. "You do not stand alone." A hush spread through the conference hall in the video. "Those who believe in justice, anywhere, will always be with you." Layla looked up at her, eyes bright. "He tagged you in the statement. It's everywhere." Jasmine swallowed, her throat dry. "Why me?" she whispered. But the question wasn't really for Layla, it was for herself. Because in all her years of fighting, she had never imagined that the ripple of her words could reach that far. And for the first time in a long time, she felt something she hadn't dared to feel. Not fear, not exhaustion, but a fragile, disbelieving hope. By midday, her office felt like a newsroom, phones ringing. Staff huddled around glowing screens, voices layered over each other, excited, overwhelmed, slightly awed. Jasmine stood near the window, watching the sidewalk below fill with cameras. She turned as Layla approached, tablet in hand. "It's trending everywhere," Layla said, her voice half disbelief, half admiration. #, with Jasmine is #1 worldwide. Jasmine pressed a hand to her temple. "All because of one video." Layla gave a small smile. "It's not just the video. People see what he sees." Jasmine didn't answer. Another aide rushed in, breathless. "CNN wants a statement. BBC called twice. Reuters is asking for comment." "Comment about what?" Jasmine asked, exasperation creeping into her tone. "About how it feels to have an African leader publicly endorse you when your own country is—" The aide stopped, realizing too late how the sentence would end. Jasmine looked at her steadily. "When my own country is pretending it doesn't see me." No one argued. Her phone buzzed again, a text this time. "Unknown number. I meant what I said. You do not stand alone." For a moment she just stared at it. Layla peered over her shoulder. "He texted you personally?" Jasmine nodded slowly. "Apparently." "What are you going to say back?" Jasmine let out a breath. "I don't know." Outside, a reporter lifted a microphone toward the building's glass doors, as if she could sense the story taking shape inside. Jasmine knew they all wanted the same headline: Traoré backs Crockett. Is this the start of a global movement? But she didn't feel like a symbol. She felt like a woman who had fought too many battles alone, until someone she'd never met reminded her that solitude was a choice. She turned away from the window. "Draft a response," she said quietly. "To the press?" Layla asked. Jasmine shook her head. "To him." And as her staff hurried to follow, she closed her eyes and let herself feel it, the strange, disarming power of being believed. Jasmine sat alone at her desk, the cursor blinking on an empty email draft. To President Ibrahim Traoré. Subject. She had never written to a head of state before. Not like this. Not when it felt so personal. Layla stood quietly in the doorway, sensing that this was one of those moments best left undisturbed. Jasmine rested her fingers on the keyboard. She could have kept it formal. "Thank you for your support. I appreciate your solidarity." But the words tasted hollow. Because this wasn't about protocol, it wasn't about optics. It was about a stranger on the far side of the world who had seen her more clearly than some of the people she worked alongside every day. She typed slowly. "Your message reached me in a moment I thought I was standing alone." She paused, exhaling, deleted the sentence, typed it again. "I don't know if you can understand how rare it is for someone in my position to feel seen." And the cursor hovered. She could almost hear her own heartbeat in the quiet. Delete. Too vulnerable. She tried again. "Thank you for reminding me that conviction doesn't belong to one country." Still not enough. Or one continent. Still too small. She sat back in her chair, rubbing her temples. Layla finally stepped in. "It doesn't have to be perfect," she said softly. Jasmine looked up, her voice low. "But it has to be honest." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Jasmine turned back to the screen. Her fingers moved faster now. "Your words mattered more than I can say, not because they came from a leader, but because they came from someone who understands what it costs to tell the truth." She read the sentence twice, then nodded to herself. Send. When the screen cleared, Jasmine sat back and let her shoulders drop. It wasn't perfect, but for the first time in days, it felt real. And somewhere in another country, she knew he would read it and understand. She didn't need validation, but she was grateful for the reminder that she wasn't fighting alone. It was barely dawn when her phone vibrated again. She rubbed her eyes, squinting at the screen. From Ibrahim Traoré. Subject, in response. Her breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected him to reply so quickly, or at all. Layla slipped into the room, carrying 2 steaming mugs of coffee. "Another message?" Jasmine didn't look up. She just nodded. With a quiet inhale, she opened it. "Congresswoman, conviction does not belong to nations or titles. It belongs to those who choose it when compromise is easier." Her eyes blurred for a moment, and she wiped them quickly. "If my words offered you even a moment of reassurance, then I am grateful for the chance to remind you that integrity has allies everywhere." She read the final line twice, letting it sink into her chest. "Stay steady. You are not standing alone." Layla sat across from her, searching her face. "What did he say?" Jasmine's voice came out softer than she meant. "Exactly what I needed to hear." Before she could say more, her phone pinged again, this time with a headline. "Traoré and Crockett exchange private letters. An unlikely alliance?" She sighed, pressing her palm over the screen. "It was only a reply," she murmured. Layla shook her head. "Number? It was something bigger." By mid-morning, the story had spread from American networks to European outlets and back across Africa. On social media, thousands of messages poured in. "You are not alone. We see you. Integrity has no borders." And though Jasmine had never wanted to become anyone's symbol, she couldn't deny how it felt. To know that even a single voice, spoken simply, without apology, could make strangers feel braver too. She closed her eyes and let herself believe, for the first time in weeks, that maybe this wasn't all a burden. Maybe it was also a gift. By late afternoon, every network had picked up the story. Panels of commentators debated the same question. What does it mean for an African leader to endorse an American congresswoman so publicly? Some called it unprecedented solidarity. Others called it a stunt. Some accused her of orchestrating it herself. Jasmine watched the coverage from her office, the volume turned so low she could barely make out the words. It didn't matter. She already knew what they were saying. Layla perched on the edge of the desk. You don't have to respond to all this. Jasmine's gaze stayed fixed on the scrolling ticker. Crockett, a new kind of allyship. I know, she murmured. But you look like you want to. Jasmine turned away from the screen. I just don't want the story to be about me. Layla shook her head gently. It was never just about you. Outside, cameras flashed against the tinted glass. Everywhere she looked, it felt like someone was waiting for her to slip, to contradict herself, to look unsure, to admit she was overwhelmed. She was all of those things, but she wouldn't show it. Her phone buzzed with hundreds of messages, each one more insistent than the last. You inspire us. Don't back down. Tell us what to do next. She scrolled through them, her throat tight. What if she had no answer? What if she was just a woman trying to hold her ground, and that was all? Layla reached for her hand. You don't have to have the whole plan. Jasmine exhaled. Then what do I have? The truth, Layla said simply, and the courage to stand in it. The words landed harder than she expected, because she'd spent so long being told she was alone. And now, she wasn't sure she wanted to believe that anymore. Outside, the cameras kept recording, but inside, for the first time, she felt steady. The press conference was scheduled for 4 p.m. By 3:15, the lobby was already packed with reporters, their cameras balanced on tripods. Layla adjusted Jasmine's jacket, smoothing the fabric over her shoulder. You don't have to say anything, she reminded her. Jasmine looked at her reflection in the glass wall. But if I don't, they'll decide what my silence means. Layla nodded, stepping aside. When Jasmine stepped up to the podium, the bulbs flashed so brightly she almost closed her eyes. But she didn't. She scanned the crowd, so many faces she didn't recognize, some waiting to twist her words, some waiting to be inspired, some waiting for her to fail. She cleared her throat. I know many of you have questions. Her voice was calm, calmer than she felt. About the messages, about the attention, about whether this was planned. She let the silence stretch, refusing to rush. I can only tell you the truth. A hush fell over the room. I didn't ask for anyone's endorsement. I didn't expect anyone to speak my name. Her gaze flicked briefly to the cameras. But when someone you've never met tells you that you are not alone, you don't ignore it. A few pens scratched nervously across notepads. You thank them. She paused, feeling the weight of every eye on her. And you remember that solidarity doesn't need permission. The questions started all at once, overlapping in a wave of noise. Congresswoman, is this an alliance? Do you plan to meet with Traoré? Are you coordinating a campaign? She held up her hand, and the room quieted. This isn't about politics. A heartbeat of total silence. It's about the simple fact that courage recognizes itself. Then, without waiting for another question, she stepped away from the podium. She didn't look back. And in that instant, it was clear. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is the thing no one expected to hear. By evening, her office felt strangely quiet again. The reporters had moved outside, the cameras had powered down, but Jasmine knew it was just a pause, like the moment between lightning and thunder. Her phone buzzed on her desk. She almost ignored it. Almost. She picked it up, scanning the notification. From Ibrahim Traoré, subject. An invitation? Her heart gave one hard, unmistakable beat. She opened the message. Congresswoman, I followed the coverage of your statement today. She swallowed. It is clear that your voice resonates far beyond your borders. She felt the heat rise in her chest, though she didn't move. I would be honored to meet with you in person, should you find value in such a conversation. A pause. If you prefer discretion, I will respect that choice. Her breath left her all at once. Layla stepped into the doorway, watching her carefully. Another message? Jasmine looked up, her voice barely above a whisper. He invited me to meet. Layla blinked. In person? Yes. The words felt surreal in her mouth. Do you want to? Jasmine didn't answer right away. She turned back to the screen, reading the last line again. If you prefer discretion, I will respect that choice. She thought about all the ways this could be misunderstood, how the headlines would twist it, how her opponents would sneer. And then she thought about the thousands of strangers who had written to say, "You are not alone." She set the phone down, her decision already forming in her chest. I think I do. Layla let out a slow breath. Then let's make it happen. Outside, the last rays of daylight slid over the city's skyline, and for the first time in weeks, Jasmine felt something closer to certainty than fear. She didn't know what would come next, but she knew one thing: this conversation was no longer just about her. The next morning, Jasmine's office was a swirl of quiet urgency. Layla moved briskly between desks, lowering her voice whenever she said the word passport. A young aide stepped into the doorway, cheeks flushed. Ma'am, we're getting calls from every outlet. Jasmine rubbed her temples. About what now? About whether you've accepted the invitation. I haven't announced anything. I know, the aide stammered, but someone leaked your travel request to the State Department. Of course they had. She exhaled, pressing a hand over her eyes. How bad is it? The aide hesitated. CNN has a countdown timer. She lifted her head slowly. A countdown to what? To your flight. Layla gave her a wry smile. Congratulations. You're officially the most watched woman in America. Jasmine didn't laugh. She couldn't. Because as much as she'd tried to prepare herself for the scrutiny, nothing felt adequate for this moment. Her phone buzzed again. From Ibrahim Traoré. I understand there is pressure on you. My offer stands with no conditions. She read the message twice, her hand tightening around the phone. No conditions, no expectations, just an open door she could choose to walk through. Or not. Layla cleared her throat gently. If you want to back out, we can, right now. Jasmine looked at her, voice quiet but unshakable. I don't want to. Layla nodded once. Then we'll make sure you go on your own terms. Outside, news vans lined the block. Pundits speculated about alliances and agendas she didn't even understand herself. She took a slow breath, feeling the first stirrings of something she hadn't dared to claim in weeks: conviction. Whatever waited on the other side of this trip, she would face it without apology. Because some conversations were worth having, even when the world refused to understand them. The plane touched down just after dawn. Jasmine watched the runway lights flicker past the window, her reflection layered over the dark glass. Somewhere beyond the tarmac, a convoy waited to take her to the presidential compound. It still didn't feel real. Layla reached across the aisle, her voice hushed. You don't have to speak first. Jasmine's smile was thin, but genuine. I know. She'd rehearsed a dozen possibilities. How to thank him, how to explain why this mattered, how to keep her words from sounding like a prepared statement. But the closer she got to stepping off the plane, the more she understood. No amount of preparation would make this ordinary. When the jet door opened, a burst of warm air rolled over her face. She took a steadying breath and stepped into the light. On the tarmac, a small group stood waiting: advisors, translators, photographers. And at the center, Ibrahim Traoré, hands folded, expression calm but unmistakably watchful. Their eyes met, and for a long, electric moment, neither of them moved. He was the first to break the stillness. With a slight incline of his head, he spoke in a voice that carried clearly across the wind. Welcome. Jasmine felt her heart stutter once. Thank you, she said, her voice soft but steady. He stepped forward, extending his hand. I hope you know you're among friends here. Her fingers closed around his. I'm starting to believe that, she murmured. Around them, cameras clicked in rapid succession, recording every nuance, every blink, every breath. But in that moment, she didn't feel like a headline. She felt like herself. And for the first time since this began, she realized this meeting wasn't about spectacle. It was about the quiet recognition between two people who refused to be told what their principles were worth. The meeting room was smaller than Jasmine expected. No gilded chairs, no grand banners. Just a simple wooden table, 2 chairs, and a pot of dark spiced coffee. Traoré poured her a cup without ceremony. I imagine your advisors gave you plenty of warnings. Jasmine's mouth curved in the faintest smile. They did. And yet you came. She wrapped her hands around the warm porcelain. I had to see for myself. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Beyond the closed doors, aides and security waited in a hush that felt too large for the hallway. Traoré's gaze was steady. I didn't send that message for the cameras. I know. I sent it because you said something that reached my people. Her throat tightened. What was that? That no government, no institution, has the right to decide which voices matter. She nodded slowly. I meant it. That's why it matters, he said simply. Another long silence, comfortable this time. Finally, Jasmine spoke. All my life, I've been told there are battles worth fighting, and others you're better off ignoring. Traoré lifted his brows. And which is this? She looked him straight in the eye. The kind you don't walk away from. His smile was quiet, but it held something unshakable. Then perhaps that is enough. Outside the door, the cameras waited to dissect every word, to spin every motive. But inside this small room, none of that mattered. They were not allies for show. They were two people refusing to measure their convictions in currency or convenience. Jasmine set her cup down and exhaled. I don't know what happens after this. Traoré inclined his head. Neither do I. But for today, she said softly, it feels good to remember I'm not alone. He lifted his cup in a quiet salute. None of us are. And in that final moment, no headlines, no speculations, no interruptions, only two voices meeting across a table, unguarded and unafraid. People will always try to measure you by the headlines, by who stands with you, by how loud the cameras click when you walk into a room. But in the end, none of that defines you. What matters is who you choose to be when no one is watching. What matters is the conversations no one can twist into a spectacle. Today wasn't about alliances or politics. It was about something quieter and stronger. Respect, conviction, the reminder that even across oceans, courage recognizes itself. And sometimes, that's enough.